everyone. Do not hesitate to raise your hand and ask questions if you have any, or if you think that the questions that you asked in Slido have not yet been answered. It's always better to ask directly than to read questions in a file. I guess and I understand that you need 2 or 3 minutes to be less shy. So let's start with a question from Slido. Ilaria, can you start, please?
Yes, sure, I'll go. This question is from Robert from Poland, and he's asking about the different Excel files that we have with historic data. In particular, he's asking for capacity factors. In particular, he's asking which one should we consider for further analysis of the power system.
Matti, would you like to answer that one? It's related to the name of the files with extensions 30 to 39 for wind and so on. If you can just remind.
Yeah.
And where it is described in practical.
So we have simulated basically many technologies for wind. I'm answering from the wind point of view. So we simulate existing installations, which reflect to the 2020 installed capacity for each region. And then we simulate a number of future technologies with different hub heights ranging from 100 meters to 200 meters, and then a number of turbine types, which just mean the different specific power. I mean, they generate different amount of power on the same wind speed. In the report, we explain the technologies in more detail, and we have done in our research work, we have selected this technology sort of a mixture, and it's also was the same as in the previous PCD. We feel that it should reflect around Europe the technology development from now towards 2050. However, a change compared to some old PCD a few years ago, we internally did the wind kind of made the mixture. So the mixture for Belgium is 20% existing, 40% this, 40% that. But of course, it was a bit challenging because actually it's more for ENTSO-E scenarios to find the mixture, how much existing, how much future. So now we have given a number of options, and then ENTSO-E can take 20% of this, 40% of that, and so forth. So that's a slight change in the work, who does what. But we have selected what are the technologies we think all around Europe should be a good reflection towards 2050.
And just for the sake of completeness, can you remind us in which of the reports the exact list of the correspondence between the numbers in the files and the technologies is mentioned? Is it the deliverable about the one called initial climate data for PCD4? So the first.
So this I would request from ICS side because we actually didn't do the numbering, but ICS added the numbering. So if ICS could answer that.
Mattia, or something for someone from ICS?
No, sorry, I was missing this point. Can you repeat, please, the question?
Yeah, the question is in report. So you provided 3 reports so far.
Yes.
And in which one is the description of the wind technologies and the solar technologies regarding the numbering that has been put in the files is described?
Okay, so it's about the numbering of the files, so the name of the root folders, the trees of all the files. You mean this?
Yeah, no, yeah. But the question is in which of the reports is it described precisely?
Okay, it is not in the 2 reports about the softwares from. It is Stefano knows it. It is in the initial climate data report. The name is it right, Stefano? We put there all the.
Yeah, it is in initial climate data.
I will give you the deliverable number. Let me search for it.
Primarily, it is in the management plan. I don't know if you have.
I have it. It's in the initial climate data version 1 around page 26.
Do you have the number of the deliverable?
Version 1, initial climate data, so 412.1.1.1.1.
So I have it. So in the documentation section, you have this
exactly.
Document.
And if you go to the beginning of page 26.
Just here.
Yeah, you have, this is for wind. onshore, yes, onshore and offshore, and probably for the sections of the other technologies, you will find a similar table.
So basically, the answer to the initial question is that everything is documented in that report. So with the number at the end of the file name corresponds to one specific technology, and so it's indeed similar for the solar PV.
Yeah,
I
correct.
guess answers the question. So I see many hands raised. Stefano, you want to add something?
Yeah, I don't know if you have access to data management plan for this contract. Also in data management plan, these files are listed with the meaning of each field in the name. It's also ensemble number for this particular clean energy data, because we have not ensemble number for if we use this field for to be coherent with other file name just for CDS use, future CDS use, but it is listed in data management plan.
David, sorry, you were first.
Yes, what I wanted to say, in addition to what Matti was saying, is that we do have access to different technologies thanks to DTU in this particular case, but the aggregation, like if Robert was asking about power system, power system analysis studies on the ENTSO-E side, the aggregations are being done on our side, on ENTSO-E side, based on information which is available in the PMDBs. So you should not be worrying about that. Now, if on PSE side you want to do different analysis based on different technologies, this is where this comes at hand, because you might want to do your simulations based on different technologies, basically.
Just after seeing a comment in the chat from David, thank you, David, for reminding that. But we also have the HelioSwitch team with us today. So if you have questions about hydro, do not hesitate. Of course, we cover all the technologies. Then the next one was Letizia in the order. Letizia.
No, yes, it was just to answer the question. Sorry, I'll lower it.
Okay, thank you. Then we have Lukasz.
Yes,
sorry for my pronunciation.
So at the end, we'll single capacity factor for example, for the onshore. Yeah. But does it mean that do you need to collect detailed information about the number of wind farms per technology to be able to calculate the final capacity factor?
So in the PMDB, I guess it was addressed to me. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I can answer. So in the PMDB, there is a particular sheet called onshore technology, offshore technology, in which, depending on so there's a matrix. On the x-axis, you have the year, and on the y-axis, you have the technology, and the TSOs are supposed to provide in that matrix for each year what is the share of each technology that comes into the market. And based on that, we do the computation ourselves. So you don't have to specify. You specify it as a relative share. In 2030, there's going to be 50 megawatts, 10 gigawatts of wind coming into the market. 10% are of this capacity, 20% are of this capacity, 70% are of this capacity.
So does it mean you don't need to extend the PMDB in this context?
No.
To be able to calculate the final single capacity factor?
No. The process stays the same.
Okay, clear. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And so yeah, we can also remind when we are here that in the future releases of the PC, because the contract with Copernicus is for 3 years. It started 6 months ago, but in the next 2 years and a half, we will also work on developing the energy conversion models, so the models that allow to compute the load factors for wind and solar in a flexible way, so that in the end they will be it will be possible to use them in the Copernicus Climate Change Toolbox, which is an online environment system that you can use to make your own computation. And so in the end, the ideal target would be that you could be able, if you want to use a different technology, to give the specification, the characteristics of those technologies, and then to make the computation for this specific technology. So it's premature at the moment, but that's the goal by the end of the contract. Do we have any question live? I don't see any at the moment. So please, Ilaria, if you can go ahead on the list.
I'll go. This is mainly for ENTSO-E. So it has been asked when the new PCD4 will be used for studies, and if we are considering of using only historic data or also projections. David, I don't know if you want to go, otherwise I can.
Please go ahead if you wish.
Okay, so right now the current studies are considering to use ERA 2023 and TYNDP 2024 are still considering to use PCD 3.1, but whenever PCD4 will be used for the studies, of course, projections will be taken into account because it's the added value of the new version of the database. And yeah, so this is it, and will be for future studies, not the one that are currently undergoing.
If there is no reaction, fine, you can probably go on with the list.
No, I see one question.
Yeah, we have one. Gonzalo, por favor.
Yeah. So one question on how these projections will be taken into account. If, for example, target year is 2040, then the climate data for 2040 will be used, but also the years around it, or
yeah,
how is it?
Yeah, maybe I can take this one.
Go ahead.
The idea is that from the climate change perspective, what is simulated for a specific year, so for instance, 2040 will almost for sure not happen in 2040 in reality, but it is a possible trajectory of the climate for this target horizon, considering the greenhouse gases forcing and the physics of the climate. So basically, it means that if you want to look at a specific year, let's say again 2040, then the relevant approach is to consider the years that are simulated, let's say, for 20 years around that date, which means basically 2030 to 2050. So if you want to simulate what happens in 2040, the best approach is to take, let's say, 20 years around that target time. And then it depends on the number of climate years that you can simulate in your study. For instance, currently ENTSO-E uses 35 years. So you could take 35 years, so 70 years before 2040, 70 years after, and the year 2040. So you would have 35 years. But in our case, for instance, at RTE, we consider 200 climate years. And so, of course, we don't have 200 years long time series. So we would rather take 20 years, so 2030 to 2050, but with 10 different models, and so 10 times 20 would be 200. That's the way it would be done. Of course, we are perfectly aware that this is a change with regard to the current PCD, which is pretty simpler to use. And so an important component of the work we are doing with Copernicus will be to provide guidance and a methodology to help study teams and TSOs as well to select the relevant sub-ensemble of the dataset, depending on both the kind of study they want to do, the target horizon, and the computing facility or computing capacity you have in terms of number of climate years that you can deal with. I don't know if anyone wants to add something there, or if it answers correctly your question, Gonzalo.
Yes, thank you. And then just to clarify, the time series that are called historical, then this won't be used in any studies foreseeably, or
the idea to include climate change, we don't have any other choice than to use climate projections. Because, of course, it's about the future. So in principle, once we move to taking climate change into account, which we should use only the climate projections. But of course, the historical data set has been produced for two main reasons. The first one was to compare with PCD 3.1. So just to check that things are relevant and there's no major gap between both, except the small changes that were explained last week during the webinar. And second, the other interest of producing the historical time series is that the climate projections in practice are done starting from 2006. And so we have more or less 20 years in common with the observational period. And so we can validate and characterize the quality of the projections on the common period. So that's why they were done mainly. But indeed, for future studies, if we want to take climate change into account, we will need to use the climate projections for sure.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It's more clear now.
Ilaria?
Yes, I'll go with the next one. This regard onshore wind technologies. Robert is asking if the max capacity factor for onshore wind technology should be between 0.9 and 0.95. Considering that existing technologies and future technologies plus the decommissioning of some of the existing technologies.
Matti?
Maybe, yeah. So it is indeed that for existing technologies, which is all, basically built over the previous years and decades, we assume 10% unavailability. Whereas for new installations, we assume 5% unavailability. And actually, then when you combine this, as David was mentioning, you take some part of existing, some part of future, then the total unavailability will be between 5 and 10%, i.e. it will be between this 90 and 95% availability as mentioned in the comments. So by taking a mixture of those both, as they are right now, it will be in between these numbers that were mentioned.
Thank you, Matti. And yeah, interesting remark from Will in the chat about the previous question, which is that indeed it's absolutely right. The historical time series for PCD4 could also be used for two other purposes at least. So the first one would be backcasting studies for market model calibration. And the second one would be to make comparison studies looking at the potential impact of climate change with respect to the historical situation. So basically we could play future analysis scenarios based on climate projections, so with the likely climate for those target years, and compare what it would have been with the climate from the past, and that would allow to really have a look at only the impact of climate on the simulations and their results. So thanks, Will, for the clarification.
I'll go with the next one since it looks like no. Yeah, this one regards solar technologies. It has been asked if the max capacity factor cap for PVs is lower compared to no, this is an affirmation actually. The capacity factor cap for PVs is lower compared to the previous PCD. Does it mean that now power of converters is considered instead of panels? And then it has been asked for to get to power generation from these technologies, one should multiply the capacity factors times series by the installed power of converters and panels.
Thank you, Rodrigo. I don't know.
Yeah, I can start and eventually Rodrigo will complete my answer. So thank you, Ilaria, for the question. Indeed, we make this change with regard to the last PCD. Now, so I put it in my own words. We are generating capacity factors. Capacity factors is a ratio of the power of installed capacity. In the previous PCDs, the installed capacity corresponded to the rated power of the inverters. So, and based on our experiment, we know that very often it is a module peak capacity, so the rated capacity of module, which is used to assess the installed capacity. So we decided to make the change and generate capacity factor using the module rated capacity as a reference for the normalization. So now it's important really to make this change. We don't want you should take care of not using the rated capacity of inverter, but the module capacity. The reason for that is that if you look at reference install capacity from IRENA, EuroObserver, and all these different sources, then it is really the module capacity which is a reference, and there is a change of approximately 10% between the two.
Okay, thank you, Gonzalo. You have a question?
Yes, I have a question concerning the hydro data. It's well, it's particular for Switzerland because I've been going through the data and I saw that there's in the hydro time series, yeah, the weekly inflow for pumping stations is 0 for the whole time. Well, there's no data either, nor for projections or for historical, or neither of them. And I was expecting to have some data there. In PECT 3.1, we had inflows for pumping. So I don't know if it's the input data that was maybe not correctly given or something else.
So
Or maybe Nicolas or Sarah. Nicolas, please.
yeah. So I don't remember perfectly right now, but there was some problems. There were some problems with the data. Let me check briefly. Where? There were a sort of wrong formatting with the production versus pumping data, and in particular there were maybe missing pumping or something like that. Thus every time series for every power plant were discarded. That's because of missing data. We couldn't compute anything for Switzerland pumping. I don't have right now the details about the type of error in the input data set, but I can write you a follow-up with the exact type of problem. But basically, that's the reason. We had no data to work with, basically.
David, you want to complement?
Yeah, I mean, for Switzerland, there was a bit of a distinct way of distinct workflow, because there was the only data that we were able to use was the transparency platform data that we put together with data and models put together. So it's either a formatting issue from the transparency platform, which is the only thing I can think of actually. But what I suggest is that Gonzalo, if you can, follow up with us and Helio Switch to see exactly where the problem is. I'm pretty sure we're going to get to the bottom of it, as long as it's not an issue of data availability, because if there's no data, there's not going to be inflows, of course. But our impression was that there was, to some extent, some. But could you, okay, is it about pumping or turbining?
It's the inflows for the hydro pumping stations. Right. So it's the inflows that for the PSOL, I guess, pump storage open loop.
And it's the inflow that we're looking at. I know, and I mean, I guess we're going to have to follow up bilaterally, but I know that on the transparency platform, there's no inflow whatsoever for pumping. And this is something which is taken into account in the methodology, as far as I know. I'm not sure if this affects or not the results, but we should have a look into it. Because on the transparency, there's just no info, no information about the pumping time series. It's only what they generate.
Okay, so maybe there's an action to follow up on.
I am pretty sure we should follow up.
Yeah, I would like to follow up as well.
I'm looking at the data right now, and it seems that in the dataset we only have the production without the pumping, so we cannot. I confirm that we cannot estimate the inflow without doing a delta between pumping.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But just to keep in mind that this doesn't exist on, again, it doesn't exist on transparency. So we need to see what we can do about it.
Okay, thank you, Ilaria. Next question.
Yes, next question, still about hydro. It has been asked, how did you take into account maintenance-related non-generation patterns in the statistical data for hydro generation?
So we didn't have this time explicit time series with non-generation or with maintenance or partial maintenance, but we filtered the data using the missing or zero data as one that could be ignored if the zeros or missing data are longer than 24 hours straight. So something, yeah. So basically, what we did is infer when the non-generation is sort of maintenance related. So an exact, we hypothesize that an exact zero is just maintenance or missing data. When it's in case it's just low, we have like sort of noise and stuff like that. So we inferred from the data. It's not explicitly treated. In a previous work was explicitly treated, but it was really hard to gather that data had problem itself. So this time we went to a sort of data-driven approach to estimate the data that could be used and could not. We did this. There is an important limitation, but it has, we observed that in the past work has limited impact, is on a partial maintenance. This means that in cases that there is a maintenance that does not bring to zero the production, but to a half, a third, or stuff like that, we couldn't catch it. But this is a really minor case, and we believe the impact is negligible. The most of the correction is enough with just checking the zeros, basically.
Thank you, Nicolas. There was a question in the chat about the place where the question and answer file is located on the share file. I just put the link. I think it's accessible to all of you.
Please refer to the webinar subfolder inside the PCD for consultation folder of share file. So we go with the next question. Next question. It's regards onshore, offshore, and PV's technologies. So both wind and solar technologies. They say we can see that there is a slight decrease in the average capacity factors values. Does this mean that forecasts decrease, the forecast decrease of primary energy availability is not compensated by the technology performance development?
I guess Matti and maybe Marie will answer to that one.
Yeah, I can take it from the wind side. So it wasn't quite clear reduction of where exactly, but I assume this is reduction driven by climate change. Yeah, we provided some visualizations on this, and let's say on a European scale, it is very minor. I would say on the one projection we look at, I would consider it very minor indeed. I would like to say that we haven't really taken a view on what is the compensating effect of technology, because we just simulate all of the technologies, the range of technologies, both, you know, in the current situation and in the future. So it's more actually the next step decision that, okay, and so as in this scenario, we have this and this much of the new technology, and that might very well actually easily overcompensate for the decrease. So we haven't yet taken a view on that. But I would say what I have seen, it is if the person is on the meeting and could show a bit where this, if something significant is seen, but what I have seen is for wind very small.
So maybe exactly the same answer for PV. The first point is that our technology choice are constant. So we are really keeping the same technology throughout the whole path. So that's maybe the first takeaway. We want to change that in the future, and it will correspond to the choice we will give to the end users to make a mix of different technologies. But for the current version, we have a fixed technology. So this is maybe the first part of the question. For PV, it's exactly the same. We have a very small change detected, and maybe to give you maybe more insight in that. PV is a result of two climate variables. The first is the solar radiation. There, it's impossible to see any change. And the second one is the temperature. There is a clear change. And if you see some trends in PV generation, it's mostly account for the change of the temperature. So. Laurent, your mic is off.
Sorry. Yes, still no question live, so we can.
Yes.
Next one, Ilaria, please.
This is more for ENTSO-E. They're asking if we can automatically fill hydro inflows files, PMDB files with data we have. And they're also asking if we can do the same for the classification of existing hydro power plants.
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So yes, these inflows will be, I think, these inflows will be transferred into the templates that we use for the different studies. That's clear. I mean, it was clear for us from the very beginning, but we felt that in consulting these numbers, it would be more advantageous not to put them into those templates because those templates are a bit heavy. Now it's not clear what the second part of the question refers to, honestly.
I'm not sure either, honestly. It's also the classification, the type of existing hydropower plants can be automatically filled in hydro inflows files, but I don't understand what.
I mean, the hydro inflow files or the hydro inflow template is, split into different technologies, and will, like, the population of the template will be done accordingly. So if this is actually the question, the answer is yes, it shouldn't be a problem. But if there's a different question behind, I'm not aware of it.
Okay. So maybe if the person who asked this is not satisfied, can
sure.
complement. Otherwise, we go to the next one.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think we can go to the next one because no one is showing. This question regards the hybridization cases, and it's asking how is it planned to consider such cases, in particular hybrid power plants, if the hybrid power plants are limited by previous NRA's connection power. How are we planning to consider these cases?
David, is it for you or?
I mean, I can give an answer, which I don't think it will be very much appreciated, but I will still probably give it. I think this, in my opinion, this goes a bit beyond the scope of the dataset. But it's just my interpretation. But then correct me, anyone here, correct me if I'm wrong. But this kind of so we have some sort of, like, if you wish, hybridization, which happens through what we call the CSP with storage technology, but that's a slightly different kind of animal, if you wish, because it's the technology itself that comes with the associated storage. To me, the impact of, peak shaving, if you wish, when you put some storage next to the generation technology, this is the outcome of the market model that we're using. And it's not necessarily it should not necessarily be reflected in a time series for a given technology. So I would say I don't really see a value of adding such at least at this stage, but I might not be seeing the full picture. But no, at this stage it's not included, and I don't think we have it in plans.
Yeah, and especially if I understand the question correctly as well, it means that there needs to be feedback from the power model and the input data, and that's not the plan in the PECD, at least at the moment.
No.
I can just mention that, for instance, in France, we currently follow a PhD that is trying to develop this kind of links between the input data set, especially for hydro, and the market modeling, the market model itself. And so there are some feedbacks from one to the other, but it's really, at the stage of research, and there's nothing operational there, I think. And I don't know of any other work doing that precisely. So yeah, I think indeed it goes beyond the scope of the PECD itself. Okay, next question.
There's one from
No, go, David.
So I just saw one that I saw that there's one from Emmanuel on the chat.
Okay, Emmanuel, feel free to open your mic and to ask directly if you want.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to allow me to ask my question. Sorry for not being able to access the platform. Yeah, my question is about how to play the time series. For what we do now in guidelines for adequacy study, for example, we play synchronously all the time series, the one for temperature that is driving the demand, but also wind, solar, and hydro, etc. So doing so, we ensure that in case there is correlation, physical correlation between all those variables, we get it, and that we do that correctly. But there is some drawbacks, because in particular when we address adequacy and we want to play, I don't know, 500 or 1000 Monte Carlo year using only 35 climatic year, we play again permanently the same combination. And sometimes we observe combinations that are very defavorable, with mixing, for example, low wind with high temperature, with no water, etc., with not being completely sure that this correlation is properly represented in terms of probability. So that is my question. Do you foresee in PCD4 any reason to question this principle, and perhaps to address differently the possible correlation, but perhaps it's too strongly considered at that moment? That's my question.
Well, I can start with an answer from my perspective, and then we'll give the mic to others. That's basically why at RTE we do not use 35 years, but we use 200 years, because we want to have a more important diversity of climate situations. And indeed, if you do 1000 Monte Carlo test with the same 35 input climate years, then there's the risk of it's not. I think it's more a risk of the representativity of the sample you have rather than anything else. But indeed, it's a little problematic. So what we do on our side is that we have 200 climate years and 5 combinations of an availability of thermal power plants, basically. So we end up with 1000 Monte Carlo years, but in which there are 200 different climate years. So that's how we do. I don't know if someone else wants to comment or to bring some piece of response to this question. Yes, Will, please.
Yeah, I would basically agree with you, Laurent. I mean, with the new PCD database, we'll have many more climate years, and then you can, if you have a study, instead of relying on this particular year, which might be 1 of 35, and then this factor is multiplied, you'll be able to use more climate years from multiple models, from multiple climate warming situations. And depending on the computational power you have, you might need to make a balanced choice between, okay, maybe we run more climate years, with the correlated factors, but we sacrifice a bit on the outage situations, for example, if these are less driving. So I think this will be depending on the individual TSO and the individual computational power that they have. But I would say this is, yeah, I largely agree with Laurent here.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comment or response to that one? If not, we can move to the next one.
We don't have any other question on
Okay.
the file. So if there are no longer questions,
So please
yeah.
either open your mic or write your additional questions in the conversation, in the chat.
It's Robert speaking.
Yeah, Robert.
I have one question to David regarding the one file per technology per country for ENTSO users. So these files are already existing or they will be generated in the future?
You mean for PECD4?
Yes.
Yes, they already exist.
Okay, if you can somehow let me know where I can find them.
So I think this is what Laurent is trying to show now. The thing is that the name of the technology is being converted into an integer value, and the mapping between the two, you find it in the document that Mattia mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. Well, I think once Sherpa will
yeah.
Okay, so it's in the internal consultation folder structure. Then you have this full-time service data, and everything is there. So, for instance, if I go for projected, so this is one model, and if we look, for instance, at the wind onshore, then you have all these files. I can't extend the length of the but you will have one file for every zone and
yeah, but it's for different technologies, right? And
yes.
I'm asking about one file for including all of them
per country. You mean?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not the format that was decided for the data, but I guess it's not extremely difficult to deal with.
What I would add here is that the reason we wanted to go for this particular format in which we have all the countries or the PCD zones in this particular case all together is because we are developing this data set together with ICS and the partners, well, DTU, Garmin, HelioSwitch, and since this data will be hosted by C3S in the near future, we thought that it was in everyone's interest to maintain the C3S format, because in the end, it's not going to be only ENTSO-E and the members using this data. The data will be under an open source license, and we should be. It would be nice for C3S to not, to be consistent with respect to the format in which they're delivering this kind of information. So we agreed that we would get this data in the first place, at least in this CSV format that contains everything. And if we need to split things, we're going to do it on our side. So if there's a request from, in this particular case, PSC, to have like a country-specific data, I can't say right now that ENTSO-E will be able to go for it in the very near future, because we have plenty of things to do on our hands, but it can definitely be something that we can figure out.
Okay, thank you. I mean, like, it's not certainly from PSC. I'm saying, like, in the process of preparing TYNDP, for example, right? We need a time series for all the TSOs. And I don't imagine having the model with 10 different technologies per country. So I rather imagine having one file for one country,
so
for one technology. So we need to compensate it all to one file.
Now I understand. But the thing is that part of, like, we didn't mention it because, I mean, now I understand. So the thing is that the format that you see here is the, let's say, the raw format, the format in which we're receiving the data, and the format in which the data will be probably hosted on the C3S machines at some point. But we still have the post-processing stage on the ENTSO-E side, which means taking all this data, and converting it into one file that has, the aggregation of technologies and the aggregation of different PCD zones into market nodes. That part of the process doesn't change. We have developed all the downstream part of the scripts that should be able to ingest all this data and produce what the TYNDP or the ERA study needs. And whenever time comes for the study teams to say, look, we need this data, we are more or less ready. It's going to probably take us a couple of weeks to just convert everything into the formats that you need. But that's already taken into account.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And yeah, in any case, if it's just a matter of rearranging the files, it can be done very easily in R Python. And in case TSOs doesn't have the resource or the knowledge to do that, I think it's pretty quick to do. And maybe either the secretariat or the expert team can help on those aspects. It's a few lines of code which are very easy to handle. Matti, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, if there are others, I would like to maybe bring out here two things, because we were contacted by Terna with some comments on the Italian case. So maybe two general things from there. Please note that even though the projection time period starts from 2006, it does not mean that year 2015 in the projection would fit to the actual 2015. Maybe it's a long discussion why this is not the case, but this is the case. So if you want to compare year by year, please use the historical period. And then maybe another case, also please note that, when we model future technologies, let's say to countries that don't have any installations, we have to make assumptions, right? One is the technology, but then let's say within an offshore region, we need to assume where do we simulate the individual power plants. So we have taken now a generic assumption that we consider the 10 to 50% best locations for every region. It's explained in the reports. Now, in some countries with the very first offshore wind power plant that will be installed, maybe it is actually in the very best locations, and maybe it will achieve higher capacity factor than in our simulation. But we cannot simulate every individual point. This is something in the future we can redefine or we can provide additional data. But please note that we need to make assumption on the locations within the region. We have taken a generic 10 to 50% on the wind. For those locations where we don't know where they are, and for all of the future technologies. So that's just a note there.
Yeah, thank you. Important comment indeed. So do we have any last question? If not, I think we will wrap up, but yeah, just 3, 2, 1. Nothing. Okay. So please, for TSOs, remember that the consultation is open until the 24th. So which means the end of next week. Please, if possible, do not wait the last minute to fill the consultation, because then we will have to proceed all the answers to make a compilation of that, and we will have to present that at the SDC meeting on the 29th. So the timeline is pretty tight. So please do fill the consultation as soon as possible. In case you have additional questions, please feel free to send them by email to the pecd@entso-e.eu email address, and we can respond it. I think that the best way to deal with additional questions will be to add them in the Word file, in the Q&A part of the share file, so that everyone can see the responses. And yeah, we are. I think it's fine. I would also maybe just like to mention, for those of you who are interested, that on next Monday, so the 20th, from 10 to 12 Central European time, there will be a workshop dedicated to the other Copernicus contract, which is parallel to the one we are talking here, which is about the extension of the Copernicus climate service for the energy sector service to the whole globe, the full Earth. So Yves-Marie and his colleagues from ICS and so on are developing the same kind of approach, but worldwide, based on slightly different climate simulations. But they are working also on that, and it's very exciting to see that. I will be in the workshop. I will moderate the session, and yeah, I would clearly encourage you to go there. Mattia, I don't know if you have the link. If you could put the link of the event on your webpage, that would be pretty useful.
the link
of the webpage. I have it. I can put it in the chat. I have it there. Just for everyone to be aware of it. For those who would like to participate, I think it's still time to register. So it would be about.
Yeah, because Angela is taking care of this. Maybe I can ask to make an email. If you want, I can send an email to everybody here. I don't know if you have a list.
Yeah, or the link is in the chat. I think it's fine.
Okay.
Okay. So feel free to register and to join for this interesting webinar. And of course, remember to fill the consultation. And with that, I would like to thank all the project developers for their attendance today, answering the questions, and also taking time to answer questions offline. And of course, I would like to thank all of you from our fellow TSOs for your participation today. And again, in case you have additional questions, do not hesitate to contact us by email, and we will be happy to clarify as much as we can about this new important data set. David or Ilaria, any final word? Or?
I would also like to thank everyone for taking the time to be here, and we look forward to your feedback on the consultation.
Okay, thank you everyone. Have a nice day.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.